A headline like that is every parent's worst nightmare in Burkina Faso, and it represents a tragic, recurring reality. While this specific event isn't confirmed, the constant threat is very real. An attack on a school, the murder of children, is more than just a tragedy. It's a direct challenge to the very foundation of Captain Ibrahim Traore's government, his promise of security. It's a calculated blow aimed at the heart of his revolution. This threat puts his leadership under a microscope like never before, forcing a question that echoes from Ouagadougou to the farthest corners of the Sahel. After all the promises and sacrifices, can the nation's most vulnerable people actually be protected? The fight for Burkina Faso's soul has entered its most critical and perhaps most painful chapter. Asterisk to get why these kinds of attacks are so devastating. You have to remember the promise Captain Traore represented when he seized power on September 30th, 2022. He was a figure of hope for a nation on its knees. At the time, the security situation was catastrophic. Some estimates suggested over half the country was partially or totally controlled by terrorist groups. The state's authority had vanished in entire regions. Into this chaos stepped Captain Traore. Young, determined, he spoke of sovereignty, dignity, and war. He made it clear, the number one goal was security. Everything else could wait. And for a while, it seemed to be working. The government went on a massive recruitment drive for the army and, most importantly, for the Volunteers for the Defense of the Homeland, or VDPs. This was a call for every citizen to help defend the nation. Traore's government also looked for new international partners, buying new military gear, like advanced drones, that gave his forces a real edge. The initial reports were glowing. We heard about operations that neutralized hundreds of terrorists and saw videos of the national flag being raised over reclaimed towns. The government confidently announced major territorial gains, with some officials recently claiming that around 71% of the country is now back under state control. This was supposed to be a national restoration, a sign the tide had finally turned. But the persistent violence, especially against schools, brutally punctures that narrative. For years, armed groups have waged a war on education. They systematically target teachers, students, and school buildings because they know that destroying education is how you destroy a nation's future. As of early 2024, reports indicated that over 5,300 schools were closed because of the conflict, affecting more than 820,000 students. Those numbers likely fall short of today's reality. This isn't just a tactic, it's a generational catastrophe. In the making, an attack on a school today feels different because it happens while the government is projecting strength. It raises a terrifying question. Is the enemy just changing tactics? As the army pushes them out of territory, are they shifting to spectacular, psychologically devastating attacks on soft targets? This forces a painful reevaluation. While the army is focused on big offensives, these attacks reveal a tragic vulnerability and chip away at the government's biggest claim, that they are restoring security. It tells the people that even as the army advances, their children might not be safe in their classrooms. This is the ultimate test for Captain Traore. How he handles this persistent threat will define his presidency more than any battlefield win. The problem is creating fractures on multiple fronts, at home, abroad, and within his own government. The fracture within: for the average person in Burkina Faso, the only metric that matters is personal safety. Geopolitics and talk of sovereignty are one thing, but the real promise is being able to live without fear. Attacks on civilians shake that confidence to its core. They plant a seed of doubt. If the government, with all its new weapons and soldiers, can't protect a school, then who is truly safe? This doubt gives oxygen to political opponents who will start to whisper about failure. They'll argue that the all-out military strategy has left communities unprotected. They will point to the VDP program and ask tough questions. While the VDPs are a core part of Traore's strategy, arming civilians has come at a cost. Human rights groups have documented serious abuses and killings of civilians by these same forces, raising concerns that the program may be fueling ethnic tension and chaos instead of creating safety. This also puts huge pressure on the military and the VDPs themselves. They are on the front lines, fighting and dying, fueled by a belief in their leader. An attack on children can be deeply demoralizing. Traore has built his entire image on being a warrior president. He has said that some attacks are personal, aimed directly at him. An attack on a school, a symbol of the very future he claims to be fighting for, is as personal as it gets. It erodes public trust and the morale of his fighters, straining the national unity that has been his greatest strength. The war of narratives. While the nation grieves these recurring tragedies, a second war is already raging: the information war. You can almost write the headlines yourself. Western media will likely frame any major attack as proof that Traore's government is failing, that the country is spiraling into chaos, and that turning away from the West was a disaster. They will highlight the number of displaced people, which has continued to grow, and present any incident as the direct result of his policies. But that's not the whole story. There's a powerful counter-narrative, one that resonates across the continent. From the perspective of many Pan-Africanists and supporters of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, these attacks aren't just random acts of terror. They're seen as strategic moves in a bigger geopolitical chess game. They ask the critical question: Cui bono? Who benefits? Who benefits from an unstable Burkina Faso? Who benefits when a leader like Traore, who kicked out foreign military bases and is pushing for monetary sovereignty, is made to look like a failure? To them, the answer is clear. The same external powers that have, in their view, profited from an unstable Africa for centuries. They argue that these terrorist groups aren't isolated fanatics, but are often proxies, tools used by outside forces to destabilize defiant nations. This narrative reframes tragedy. It turns a moment of weakness into a test of resolve, and the victims into martyrs for national liberation. It reinforces the idea that the fight isn't just against terrorism, but, as Traore himself says, a fight for true independence. The inevitable retaliation faced with this pressure, Captain Traore's response, is likely to be swift and forceful. His brand is action, not talk. Based on his past moves, we can expect a few things. First, a massive military operation. The government will need to show it is responding with overwhelming force. Expect official announcements of successful strikes to boost public morale and show that there is a heavy price to pay for attacking civilians. Second, a defiant public address. Traore is a master of communication. He'll speak to the nation not as a politician, but as a soldier. He will express grief, but quickly pivot to anger and resolve. He will likely blame the attacks not just on terrorists, but on their external masters, unifying the population against a common enemy and deflecting internal criticism. Third, we could see a tightening of internal security. Traore has survived alleged coup attempts before and is well aware of threats from within. He may move to silence individuals accused of spreading disinformation or working against the state. It's a playbook designed to seize control of the narrative, project strength, and rally a grieving nation back to his cause. Asterisk. The Sahel on a knife's EDGNE attack in Burkina Faso sends shockwaves across the entire Sahel. It's a direct test of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, the mutual defense pact between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger formed in September 2023. The core promise of the AES is collective security. An attack on one is an attack on all. But these kinds of attacks on soft targets expose a potential flaw in their strategy. The enemy doesn't need to defeat their combined armies on the battlefield. They just need to carry out enough of these horrific acts to prove the alliance can't deliver security. Critics will use this to argue that leaving regional bodies like ECOWAS has left these nations isolated and more vulnerable. The leaders of Mali and Niger know that a major security failure in Burkina Faso reflects on them and could embolden similar groups in their own countries. This insecurity also complicates the EES's bigger plans. The three nations want to form a confederation, maybe even a common currency, and build shared infrastructure projects. Those are monumental goals that require stability. Every attack frightens off investors and forces the governments to pour even more resources into the military, delaying those long-term projects. This is also a major test for the AES's new international partners, like Russia and Turkey. The world is watching to see if these new alliances can provide the intelligence and technology needed to counter these threats. Meanwhile, Western powers might see it as a chance to regain influence by offering conditional aid. The stakes aren't just for one nation, but for an entire region's dream of a new, sovereign future and the constant threat of violence against civilians, especially children, is a devastating reality in Burkina Faso. It is a moment of profound grief and stark clarity. These attacks are not random. They are strategic assaults on hope, designed to sow fear and break the national will. This crisis lays bare the brutal complexities of Burkina Faso's struggle. It's a test of Captain Traore's leadership, his military strategy, and his ability to hold his nation together. It is a flashpoint in a global information war and a severe trial for the fledgling alliance of Sahel states. The loss of innocent lives is a devastating blow. But how the Burkinabe people and their leadership respond will define the next chapter. Will this tragedy break their spirit, or will it forge it into an even stronger resolve? The road ahead is incredibly difficult, but for the people of this proud nation, retreat has never been an option. Asterisk, what do you think is the real motive behind these attacks? Is it a sign of a failing security strategy, or is it a calculated act of destabilization by external forces? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to continue this vital conversation, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stay informed, stay engaged,